You are now watching the Stampede, brought to you by the Hive. Game footage may or may not be related.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Stampede, brought to you by the Hive, where we do Let's Plays, game reviews, and so much more. We're three dudes that tried to build a house once and it didn't fucking work.
I blame it on you. I had the hammer. You forgot the nails.
My name is Buffalo Prime, and I am joined here by another host of the Hive, Jayce. How you doing today, Jayce?
I'm doing great. What are we gonna fucking talk about today?
Today we're talking about the horror genre and horror video games, and we are joined by special guest Mask-esque on YouTube. We'll bring him in just a moment here. I do want to remind you guys that you should feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube. We post content fairly regularly, and if you ever want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us on Twitter, @HiveGuys, or @Buffalo Prime. Before we bring Mask in, we are talking about horror games today, and we definitely want to let you, the viewers, know that you can feel free to let us know some of your favorite horror games, and any comments or opinions you have on this episode, you can always voice out into the comment section below. So, Jayce, I want to hear from you first. What is your favorite horror game as of right now?
Ooh, well, the Silent Hill games. Those bring a lot of paranoia. There's suspense in it. There's so much going on, and, things are jumping out at you. It was just a great series, and I started that on PlayStation 2. I didn't know if there were previous titles on the PlayStation, but yes, it is a great series.
And have you seen the movies of Silent Hill?
The movies are good, but I prefer the games.
There's something different, I think, about gaming, too, that it differs from horror movies, where the horror movies, you're sitting there and you're watching a preset set of situations and set of things that have gone on. Where video gaming, that's you. It's all on you.
You're playing that character. You're going through that mess.
So, like I said, we do have a guest on the line here today, Mask-XX. You can follow him on YouTube, XX Masquerade X. We have his link in the description section below. So let's bring Mask in. How you doing today, Mask?
I'm doing wonderful.
Awesome.
How about you?
I'm doing great. So,
Awesome.
We definitely want to start off. Tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel. We know you do a lot of Let's Plays of horror games. Kind of how did you get into that, and where do you hope to go?
Well, see, I actually got popular by the whole thought of Markiplier, if you remember him.
Okay.
But I was always into Let's Plays and playing horror games in general because it took me away from my own problems. With me, when you expect from my channel, it's pretty much someone you think is on drugs, but in reality is not.
I think that describes the Hive a little bit too
Yes.
at times, for sure. All right, so let's jump right into it. I think the first question I really want to pose to both of you, we'll start with Mask, and we'll head over to Jayce with some opinions from there. What makes a horror game truly scary? Now, for me personally, I think the jump scare aspect is a little bit of a cheap thrill. Like you're walking along a dark path and suddenly something jumps out at you. I mean, it's a good scare, but is it a quality scare? So, Mask, we'll start with you. What do you think makes a good horror game?
Well, I would expect a good horror game to have a very good, thought-out plot. That's what it needs. But not only that, it needs to have psychological effects, like losing control, especially with games like Evil Within, which is all psychological warfare. Things that make you lose track of reality and put you in this world.
Okay.
I agree with Mask here. I played a little bit of the Evil Within. You do get that sense of paranoia. There's a lot of psychological factors going on. The only thing I didn't like about Evil Within is the main character never questioned his sanity. If I was in that situation, I'd be questioning myself. If that brought those factors in, I think it'd actually bring more paranoia. Why are these things going on? Am I insane? What is going on?
And that was one of the big downfalls that I think Evil Within really got, which is a surprise for Bethesda, in my opinion. If that's the case, that the character wasn't really, questioning what's going on. Bethesda has been known to make fantastic storylines and great character development. So that is a bit of a shock.
There's this woman with 6 legs, and he's like, "Oh, I just got to run away." He never questions the fact, why the hell is this happening?
Okay, and that frustrates you.
Yes, a little bit. I feel like if that was there, that factor of distress and paranoia and all that, and bringing that into that character, I think that would brought it from here to way up here.
Okay. Now let's go ahead and move into our next topic. It kind of flows right into it. The Evil Within is one of those rare horror games that are made by Bethesda, a big budget company.
I thought it wasn't made by them. Was it just produced, or
was it Tango Gameworks that might have?
Yes,
actually
they
been
just produced it. They helped bring it out.
But it's a mainstream game.
Right,
you can argue
definitely.
that. And you look at games like Silent Hill. You look at games like Dead Space. Those are other mainstream games. But you have to kind of look at the big picture of horror. It really seems like the horror games are now being developed by indie developers or small market companies. Mask, we'll start with you. Do you think this is a good direction that the horror genre is going in? And go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, if you want to continue with the question, I would say yes, it is, because indie gamers have more passion for what they're doing. They're small time. See, if a big game company, they can basically sell crap and do the same thing over and over again. Look at COD, for example.
Oh, I agree with Mask. Actually, I didn't think about it like that until he brought that point up. Is indie gamers and developers all like that? They want passion. They're bringing in the storyline. I totally agree with Mask.
Now, I think another thing that small game developers can do well is they can take risks without a lot of penalty to that. If you look at a big game company that tries to take a risk on the horror genre and they fail on it, that's a lot of money out the door. Where indie developers can just pick it up and try to make a different game.
That's also very true.
Now, and I think we've seen a little bit of a decline in the horror genre as a mainstream form of media. You look at YouTube as a good reason why the horror genre has been predominant in the past, is that you have these Let's Plays, you have these reactionary videos, like the reaction to Slender. Some of those are fantastic. Mm-hmm. Mask, I'll start with you. What do you think the horror genre and horror developers need to do to get horror games either back on track to that next level, or if you think it's already fine, how can they maintain the same level of development?
Well, look, we need to look at this. You already said it before. Jump scares are a very cheap way to get their thing.
Agreed.
It's just a reaction.
Yep.
They're going away from the plot lines, and they're just making you do the same thing over and over. Slenderman was a great example of using that for uniqueness. You were collecting things, but that collecting things brought the monster towards you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it made it unique.
I
but
agree.
most game developers don't do that anymore.
So you think a uniqueness is what needs to happen from there?
A uniqueness is definitely something that needs to be happened. A psychological effect, especially with horror games, is what really drives the passion for gamers.
Now we're looking at also Five Nights at Freddy's is a really big horror game at the moment. What are some of your opinions on that, Mask?
The game where you sit down, do nothing, and be scared by freaking animals. It's basically excellent. They did a very good job at it. It's very popular.
It freaks me.
Yeah.
We also need to remember this. For what you said before, they should not be scared for what they're doing. Even negative comments, if it's about something that's in the game, will make it sell more. If it's about profit, they'll be able to sell more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so we're going to segue into the last question here. Favorite horror game of all time? We've kind of heard from Jayce. You like the Silent Hill series.
I do. And
Yep.
that new PT one that's coming out and kind of in that same lineup, I cannot wait, man. You
Yep.
brought that paranoia, brought that psychological factor. I liked it.
Right. Mask, what is your favorite horror game of all time?
My favorite horror game would either be Jericho, made by Clive Barker, the one who made Hellraiser.
Would you have a couple of Let's Plays up, we see?
Yes, I do. I have one episode, and it'll be second episode will be up later on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then what was the other one you wanted to say?
Well, I think for the second one, it'd be Cry of Fear. It's a game that's more indie-based,
Okay.
and it's free, but it goes on with psychological effects. The guy is really depressed, is very suicidal, and ends up being trapped in a world where he doesn't understand.
Okay, can we expect a Let's Play out of that from you?
Yes, you will, actually.
Awesome.
Nice.
Kind of a hint of things to come. I'm not a big horror game kind of guy. I'm not going to pretend like I am. It's just not a genre that I've ever really gotten fully immersed into. Slender Man was one of the first real horror games that I truly got into with Baloney Suntan, and scared the crap out of me. I played it once, and I cannot bring myself to play it again. So I always appreciate people like you, Mask, who can go out there and really take advantage of the horror genre and for all of us to see. So thank you so much for stopping by the Stampede. We hope to hear from you soon. Good luck with the rest of your Let's Plays.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
So let's go ahead and continue to follow up from here, Jayce. Based on what Mask has said, what do you take away from the horror genre? And what are your overall opinions?
He's right though, and you're right. You can't have the jump scare, easy tactics, and all that. You need to have that paranoia. You need to have that psychological factor. You need to feel like why. You need to question yourself.
Absolutely.
Every decision you're making in the game, you need to question it. It just brings you into that world, that universe, and it makes you scared.
And one of the things that companies can do really well is add horror elements to games that don't already have horror elements. What I mean by that is if you look at the Fallout game, there are some aspects to the Fallout game that are just morbid, they're dark themed, and it almost gave me one time I went into a vault where they were talking about how they were doing experiments on the people within them, and they were mutating their brains and things like that. And even though Fallout is not a horror game, so to speak, I was freaked out.
You were a little suspensed, right?
I was like, man,
exactly.
what the heck? So
exactly, they kind of built that up, and that aspect was making you in suspense. So,
Right, absolutely.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening in for everybody that's been tuning into this episode. Again, leave us your suggestions, your comments, and anything you want in the comment section below, or reach out to us on Twitter. We want to thank Mask again for joining us today. We'll check you next time on The Stampede.